Chapter 10. The light was white sterile. It hurt my eyes, but I needed to fight against the exhaustion sapping my strength. I needed to hear Brandon's answer, needed to know more than ever that he loved me. If it was the last thing I managed before my death, it would be enough. Blinking, my eyesight blurry, I saw someone sitting beside me. Brandon croaked, sounding funny to my own ears. No, my grandpa whispered soothingly. Paper rough skin touched mine, his hand closing on my wrist. Confused by what was going on, I looked down to see the tubes in my arm. Take a deep breath, Fiona. Just relax. Where am I? This isn't right. I was in the desert and I tried to sit up, grasping at my stomach in fear. I was lying in a bed, my body covered in a blanket. How am I alive? It's all right, he assured me, gently stopping me from lifting the covering. Don't look. The stitches are still raw. It was pretty ugly. We looked at each other. I suspected he was trying to read me as much as I was. Him. Did you see him? I asked, positive he knew who I meant. My grandpa shook his head. No. The nurse told me a young man dropped you off, and in the bustle of getting you to emergency care, he vanished. Digging into his pocket, he set something gently in my hand. He left this at the desk. Holding my phone up before me, I tasted salty tears as they rolled down to my lips. Sniffling, I wiped at my eyes. I knew what had happened. Faster than a car. He got me here in time. A better way to save me than making me a werewolf. Are you all right, honey? Yeah, I said, setting the phone on my stomach. I flinched, the pain dulled. They must have me on medicine for this, but it still hurts. He saved me. Grandpa. Brandon saved me again. His fingers closed on my wrist, then slid away. I know. I didn't see him, but I know. Closing my eyes, the drugs pressed on me like soft cotton. You really believe me? Of course I do. Do you think? I whispered, my cheek turning on my pillow. That he'll come back again? Now that I'm safe? My grandpa's voice sounded far away. I imagined I was falling down a tunnel made of thick silk. If you need him again, Fiona, then I'm sure he'll come back to you. I fell asleep with a smile. I spent a week in the hospital before they let me go home. My grandpa wanted to stay longer, but I assured him I was fine. He'd already spent so much time with me after his frantic drive from South Dakota. I didn't want to imagine how scared he'd had to have been when he got the call from the hospital. Outside of some stitches that would no doubt leave notable scarring, my body had no damage. Brandon had gotten me there in time, utilizing his abilities that he proclaimed to be a curse. I wasn't so sure if he was right. It wasn't injury or lack thereof that made me walk with heavy steps into my front door. The last time I'd seen Brandon had been moments before my expected death. Hadn't heard a word from him. It made my heart hurt and fed into my paranoia. That after everything, he'd chosen to run away. Passing my car in the driveway, I paused to look it over. The police had found it, and in doing so, discovered Hector's body. The story I'd come up with was that I'd been attacked by a strange animal I couldn't identify. My flesh had been rendered by claws. The doctors confirmed it to the police. The marks on Hector's throat coincided with the tail. Still, they scratched their heads over the whole mess. I told them I didn't know Hector, had never seen him before. With no other leads, it was ruled a death by animal attack. I got my car returned. It had no purpose for evidence. There was no crime. The police waited for someone to claim Hector's body. I knew no one would. Pushing through the door, I heard Angel meowing before I saw her. Grandpa had been a peach, feeding her for me while I was in the hospital. Did you miss me? Kneeling down, I rubbed her cheeks. Mewling, she smushed her body against my legs. Back and forth, her tail switching like the hands of a clock. Angel sought my fingers happily. It was pleasant, and for the most part being home relieved some of the tension in my body. You're happy I'm back. I'm happy too. Lifting my eyes, I gazed at the couch. Crossed the room. My mouth went tight, stuck that way long after I turned my eyes back to Angel. The very idea that things weren't going to be the same after everything cut at me deep. Touching my palm to my stomach, I felt the lines of the stitches through the cloth. Hector told Brandon to bite me. Is that all it would have taken? Hector had bit me instead of clawing me. Would I have become a werewolf, like he did to Brandon? So many questions, no one to answer them. Sighing, I ran my palm over Angel's back. Beneath my hand, her fur suddenly rippled in waves. Yowling, she seemed torn between being defensive or antsy. "Whoa, Angel," I said nervously. "What's wrong?" Bouncing away from me, she jumped up onto the windowsill of the kitchen. Something outside had her attention, but only briefly. Leaping away, the cat darted into my bedroom, vanishing from view. Standing slowly, I rubbed my neck. What was that about? I've never seen Angel act like that before. Well, except when my eyebrows shot up, vanishing under my bangs. Spinning, I couldn't get out my front door any faster. Please let it be real. With the breeze tickling his hair, Brandon leaned against my car. His hands were deep in his pockets. The shirt he had on was blue. I had no idea where he'd gotten it. "Hey," he said, that knowing smile spreading wide. I didn't speak. I simply flew at him, putting Angel's speed to shame. My arms tangled around his neck, lips seeking his without hesitation. How could I ever hesitate with the man I loved so completely? His mouth was tender, fingers gripping my hips to hold me against him. When I finally pulled away, he tried to steal my lips back. I didn't allow him. I needed confirmation. "You came back," I breathed, panting for air. "Of course." His face smoothed apologetically. "I would have stayed in the hospital, but there were so many people, so many things. It was too hard to be inside." "But Fiona," he said, lifting my hands between us. "I didn't go anywhere. I swear I was nearby the whole time." Gripping his shoulders, I hugged him so hard it was like I wanted to merge our bodies together. I was so scared. I gushed, squeezing back my tears. "The things I was thinking, I was afraid you'd left me. You acted like you wanted to back at the arcade." Brandon pet the back of my head, warm liquid soaking his shirt from my sobs. "Sure. Fiona, I know what I said. I was scared too, and angry at myself. But I couldn't leave you. I was just going to run off some steam. I didn't expect to encounter Hector." Sniffling, I melted into his comforting smell. "You were really going to come back, Fiona," he said, taking my chin to make me look at him. His thumb rubbed away my tears, his smile erased my pain. "I was never really gone." I heard his words. My body craved to test them. Digging my fingers into his shirt, I used it for leverage. The car squeaked as I pushed him into it, kissing his lips and tasting the tang of my own tears. He rose to meet me, too eager to prove he was there. When his fingers rolled down my belly, I gasped in pain. "Shit, sorry," he said quickly, lifting his arms like they were weapons. "It's fine," I said, touching my shirt over the stitches. "I'll have them out soon." Brandon made a face, lowering his fingers till they hovered over the healed scars. "Fiona, I'm so sorry." "No, it wasn't your fault, forget it." I put on a crooked smile. "It is your fault if you back off, because I made a little bit of a pain face." He looked me over, scratching at his hair. "Really? Is that a challenge?" Reaching out, I took his hands and placed them on my hips. "I haven't seen you for weeks." Chuckling, he dipped his fingers into my purse. My confusion was plain until he lifted my car keys. "Fine," he said. "Let's give Angel a break." The metal jingled in the lock. Brandon slid into the back seat, pulling me in with him. The heavy sound of the car door shutting felt poignant. Like I was made of glass, he pulled me on top of him on the cushion. His mouth was inquisitive, checking to see how much was appropriate, how much I could handle. I was recovering, but more capable than he thought. Tugging his shirt up, my gaze fell across his perfect chest. The sight of it made me suddenly doubtful. How can he be so handsome? It's almost unfair. And now, here I am with this ugly scarring. Brandon smiled, unaware of my deprecating thoughts. He moved to pull my clothing up, yet I stopped him with grappling hands. "What's wrong?" he asked, eyebrows furrowing. I'm not comfortable with you seeing me like this." "Why? Fiona, I love you. It's nothing to be embarrassed about." Glancing away, I looked out the front window of the car. "My scars are awful. And you're like a fashion model." He made a soothing sound, fingers tracing the line of my ear. It was enough to coerce me to look down at him. When he saw he had my attention, he motioned me to sit up. I did so, balancing on the seat so he could slide his jeans down. As always, the reveal made my neck turn pink. He wasn't done, though. He had a plan. Kicking off his shoes, his pants, he took my hand in his. Gingerly, he placed my palm on the old, mangled bite marks on his left thigh. "Look," he said, his voice soft and serious. We both have scars, okay? Does it make you love me less? My answer was fast. Of course not. Then, he went on, guiding me down till I was spread on top of him. How can you think it matters that you have them? If anything, now we share something else. It's a mark of what we've been through. Together. Together. I kissed him with gusto, I kissed him without fear. I didn't worry about what he thought of my body. Not ever again. Our skin was hot inside the cool interior of the car. The windows became hazy with condensation from our frantic breathing. We shed our clothes, bathing in the vision of each other without a word. Who needed words? Digging into my purse where I dropped it on the floor of the car, I held up a tiny foil square. It's well. Unwrapping the condom, I lifted an eyebrow. We didn't use anything last time. I didn't have any of these. Wasn't expecting to have sex with anyone back then. Now I figure we should be, well, responsible. Is that a question? He teased, eyes warm. Clicking my tongue, I leaned away from him. I've never done this, sorry. Fumbling, I slid the latex over him without any grace. Brandon didn't care, he hissed through his teeth at the touch. The moment I was done, he pulled me back up by my arms. Willingly I followed, kissing him as he entered me. Into his lips I whimpered. Softly. I'd missed Brandon terribly, every part of him. All of him. Right then I wanted everything I could get. He was right to suggest we give Angel some peace. The sounds we were making, I wondered if my neighbors might hear us. I don't care if they do, if anyone does. I don't care at all. Breathing heavy, my chest pulsed against his. Our hearts made a song, one that got faster, louder by the second. I knew he was close when he growled, the noise not scaring me. It only drove my ecstasy higher. The beast that was in Brandon didn't want to hurt me. Did want me, though. And that set my nerves on fire. The way he rocked into me, desperate to reach a crescendo with him at the helm. The way he bit at my ear, nibbled my throat. All of it sent me over the edge, my scream obscene with passion. Brandon chased me there, holding me close and managing not to irritate my stitches. Hugging me, he breathed into my temple. The air tickled my hair, made me smile sleepily. Are you all right? He murmured. I responded lazily. There was nothing that could make my world more complete. I had gotten Brandon back. Epilogue. The grass was overgrown, creating handholds as I inched down the slope. Briar caught on my jeans, I just ignored it. It had been so long since I'd been to this place, I recalled it being easier to climb through the bushes. Come on, Brandon chided me from the bottom. Hurry up. Holding the roots of a clump of weeds, I scooted down some feet. I'm going as fast as I can. Just let go, he chuckled. I'll catch you. The cocky way he grinned up at me, I didn't doubt he would. With my pride still intact, I stumbled the rest of the way down the slick greenery. He reached out, steadying me so I didn't twist an ankle. Nice job. Giving him a light shove, I stuck out my tongue. Thanks. Stepping forward, I intended to slide around him. Brandon was quick, tugging me back by my wrist. I lost my balance, only recovering it as he planted a kiss on the corner of my mouth. Reaching up, I touched the spot gingerly. I knew my face was red, his grin said it all. Let's go, he said, long legs taking him over a rock. It's this way. Branches grabbed at us as we passed. I couldn't tell if they wanted us out or if they craved to pull us in further. Shielding my eyes, I walked behind Brandon on a path that became more familiar by the moment. Like bells, the brook sang to us when we broke out into the clearing. Unlike us, it had changed very little over the years. It was bigger, a little slower. Where it lapped at the bottoms of the rocks. Changed or not, it was still our place. He kicked off his shoes, letting them fall forgotten onto the embankment. Copied him, rolling my pants up to my knee. Brandon clambered up onto the biggest of the boulders, reaching back to offer me a hand. Grateful for it, I let him help me up beside him. Our bodies pressed together, so unlike when we were kids. Back then we'd been nervous to let any part of us touch the other. Looking down, I remembered how shyly our hands had brushed. Now, I linked my fingers with his possessively. Around us, the small stream burbled. This is still so pretty, I said. Yeah. Lifting his head, he stared at the leaves above. They turned. Everything's so green. Have you ever been back here? Before now, I mean. No. Honestly, I was always scared of coming back. I thought it would be too painful. Brandon gave my hand a squeeze. It's not painful now, is it? Leaning my cheek onto his shoulder, I took a long breath. Nostalgic. Actually. His fingers brushed through my hair, guiding my chin up until he could kiss me. It was firm, confident that I would not retreat. It was very unlike our first time. The memory made me smile. He felt it, found it was contagious. Our smiles quickly became giant grins, laughter echoing through the forest. That feels like when we were nervous teenagers. What now? Asked, tucking my hair behind my ear. Standing smoothly, Brandon hopped down into the stream. Reaching for me, he took me by the middle like I was light as air. My stitches had come out a month ago, they no longer hurt. Gently, he stood me beside him, the water cold on my skin. You mean in general? I hadn't, but when he asked, my mind jumped to that itching question. Yeah. What happens now? What will you do? What will we do? We're in this together, Fiona. His words set my heart dancing. Taking my hand, he began guiding me down the gentle river. Tug. And my ankles never strong enough to knock me down. When we stopped at your grandpa's the other night, he talked to me. What they talked? We'd made it a point to visit Grandpa on our way out to South Dakota. Part of me just needed him to see that Brandon was real, in person, that he wasn't some mythical guardian in my head. Grandpa hadn't been surprised. He just hugged Brandon, thanking him for keeping me safe. When did you guys talk? I asked, stepping over a branch in the river. The water was getting higher, the current weaker. Brandon smiled down at me, eyebrows pressing tight. After you fell asleep. He knew I wanted to discuss some things with him, I think. He was waiting for me on his porch. Where is this going? Curious, I kept quiet to encourage him. Anyway, he sighed. He asked me what my plans were. I told him I had 2 years to catch up on with you, that I wanted to get a job so I could go to college. Hell, that I needed to go pass a GED before I could do any of that. Laughing sheepishly, he stared off over the water. I hadn't thought about that. Frowning, I coiled my fingers tighter in his. You'll be fine. I know, he said, flashing me a smirk. But that's not the point of this. Your grandpa, he offered me something. What? Brandon stopped moving, the water sloshing over our thighs. I hadn't realized how deep it had gotten. Turning, he held my shoulders. He said I could stay with you, Fiona. That he knew I'd lost my family, but that if I wanted, he was happy to become, you know. Trailing off, he shut his eyes. Grandpa said he'd be his family. I couldn't stand it. Moving forward, I wrapped my arms around him in a fierce hug. Brandon is going to come live with me. He felt good in my arms, like he just belonged there. I'll never lose him, not again. His chin rested on my head, the 2 of us standing in that river for some time. Finally, I leaned back enough to see him looking at me. I love you, I whispered. And we'll make this work. Brandon, we can actually go to college together. I'm only a little ahead of you. It's what I always dreamed when we were kids, graduating together. His smile was sweet, blossoming sweeter when he kissed my forehead. Me too. We're both getting our lives back, changing a lot. Even you. Blinking, I studied his face for an explanation. What, me? How do you mean? The slyness I'd always found intoxicating returned to his features. Stepping back, he reached his hand down into the river. I didn't respond fast enough, the splash getting me in the face. Squealing, I lifted my arms. Hey, stop that. Laughing gently, he turned in a circle. Fiona, look at yourself. Look at what you're doing. Don't you remember what you confided to me over a month ago? Staring at him in slow comprehension, I looked down at the river I was standing in. I told you I was scared of water. Oh my gosh, I'm waist deep in this. That the flood had made me terrified. Well, he said softly, moving closer to me. Are you scared now? Speechless, I gazed at my reflection in the rippling liquid. No, I realized. With shock, I'm not scared at all. Did being around Brandon fix this, heal my fears? He was smiling at me so much his eyes were crinkling at the corners. Dipping my hands in the river, I sent a huge wave of water at his face. Brandon shouted, wiping his dripping chin and gawking at me. My lips coiled up at the ends. No, I admitted. I guess I'm not scared anymore. His laughter merged with mine, the 2 of us chasing each other in that river, trying to soak the other without a hint of malice. For a moment it was like we were in a bubble of timelessness, place that had existed in both our hearts while we lived separate lives. Lives that had been half complete, waiting for us to meet up again, to become whole. What we felt was no longer the naive love of teenagers. It was something far better.